Hello, and welcome back everyone from lunch. We had such incredible presentations this morning, and I'm really looking forward to our lineup of talks this afternoon. My name is Dr. Rujuta Wilson, and I am the UCLA Tarjan Center Director of Research, and it is my absolute pleasure to welcome Dr. Kathy Lord. By way of background, Dr. Kathy Lord is the George Tarjan Distinguished Professor of Psychiatry in the David Geffen School of Medicine at UCLA. Dr. Lord is a faculty member at the UCLA Tarjan Center and is a licensed clinical psychologist. Dr. Lord's research focuses on autism and related neurodevelopmental disorders across the lifespan, from toddlers through adulthood, and her work primarily aims on improving methods of identifying strengths and difficulties in autistic individuals and those suspected to be autistic, while working with families and individuals to maximize their independence and well-being for all of those concerned. Dr. Lord has also been involved in the development of the gold standard diagnostic instruments for diagnosing autism, which includes the Autism Diagnostic Observation Schedule, also commonly known as the ADOS, the Autism Diagnostic Interview Revised, or the ADIR, and the Social Communication Questionnaire, also known as the SCQ. Dr. Lord is the recipient of numerous awards, including the Lifetime Achievement Award from the International Society for Autism Research. She has over 300 peer-reviewed publications, and she's funded by the National Institutes of Health, Autism Speaks, and the Simons Foundation for numerous research grants. Dr. Lord is arguably the most famous and well-respected autism researcher on the planet. And as a friend and colleague, I can say that she's an incredible collaborator and colleague and a fierce advocate for her patients. This morning, Dr. Lord will be presenting her groundbreaking research in her lecture, A Positive but Realistic Approach to Autism from 2 to 34. It is my great pleasure to work with Dr. Lord through the UCLA Tarjan Center and to call her an esteemed colleague. I really don't know any other researcher who's more dedicated to supporting the needs of neurodiverse individuals and their families. We are lucky to have her here today. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Kathy Lord.
Hi, everybody. I'm also a terrible technology person. Let me just, there we go. Okay. It is a pleasure to be here, and I really enjoyed and learned from the presentations this morning. And I think I have things that overlap with what many people described. And I am so lucky to work with colleagues like Dr. Wilson and Dr. Lageson and the Tarjan group. All right, how do I make this? I do need to tell you that I get royalties from the diagnostic instruments. When they're something we're using for research or clinical work, I donate the royalties to Have Dreams, which is a wraparound program in Chicago, which is amazing. And I also do have funding from a lot of different places, and we do score videos for pharmaceutical companies, even though we have no vested interest in the drugs. We just want better things. And I just wanted to start, as Carrie Bearden did the other day, by saying what I'm going to talk about is work that's gone on for 30 years. And there are so many people who have been involved in this that don't think this is me in any way. I've just been really, really lucky to have great colleagues and the families who have hung in here with us for 30 years. So I want to start by saying just an assumption that I make, which is an assumption, is that autism is a neurobiological condition that probably present before babies are even born, that affects how the person learns and processes. It doesn't mean they can't learn, but it means that they take in information like who's looking at whom, why are people vocalizing, what are the subtleties of voices or gestures, and that affects what they know. And they may know a lot more than any of the rest of us know about all kinds of things because that's what they're paying attention to. But because they have different information, it means that they're learning different things. And I think the whole point of even having an autism diagnosis is the idea that if we know this, we can help people because they can learn the things that you need to learn to survive in our society. Um, and then we can learn from them. And in addition, though, I think beyond learning, what we need is opportunities for the learning and then to practice. So we can't just, for example, with getting a job, you can't just practice the soft skills for getting a job. Somebody then has to do them with you and have a job that you can possibly participate in. And I have this slide here because this little guy has brought a toy to his mother um, that he wants her to push that yellow top. And rather than make noises across the room or show her the toy from far away and try to push it and make a facial expression. He has literally brought it to her, stuck it in her lap, and taken her hand and pushed it down. So he is communicating, he is making his point clear, and that's great. But the problem is that if you really rely on, for example, taking someone's hand, you can't communicate from afar and it limits you. So we want him to have opportunities to do more, um, building on what he's already done. I think another really important point, which people alluded to, I think Andrew alluded to a little bit this morning, is that autism does not come by itself. And some of these issues that go along with autism may be biological and part of the condition, but others may become maybe consequences of not being understood, not being able to communicate clearly, or having people expect things that don't make sense to you. And there are also issues such as intellectual disabilities, which are real, which make a clear difference to what someone, how fast someone is going to learn. So I'm going to today, just in this brief time, talk about one particular study that we started almost, I think, 33 years ago now, where we saw any kid in 3 different regions who was suspected of having autism. They didn't all actually have autism, but who were under the age of 3. So most of the kids were 2, a few even younger. And we were able actually, because we had a mobile team and we jumped in and we could see families within a couple weeks of getting a referral, we were able to see consecutive referrals in North Carolina, and then when I moved to Chicago, we kept doing the study there in this broader Chicago area. We also had a few kids referred to us who never had autism at that point. And then we've added a sample in Michigan when I lived there. This sample is 75% Caucasian, 25% African American, without a lot of people, for example, who spoke Spanish because of when we started this. And what's different about it from many samples is that the families generally are very middle class or lower income, not really poor, because these are families who brought their child to be assessed at 2 because they were worried. But we do have many rural families, particularly from North Carolina and Michigan, as well as urban and suburban families. And they're not families necessarily, they're definitely not families who are super wealthy. So we started out asking, can we diagnose autism at 2? That was our question, because many of the families we met in those days would say, I knew something was different long ago, but they couldn't get a diagnosis till later. And still in the United States, age 4 is the time most kids get diagnosed. And then because the families agreed to hang in there with us, and we have been going to them. So I think we do send out packets and surveys every 6 months, but we try every couple years to go see the families wherever they are. And now many of the adults have moved out of home, so we see them too. And we've asked what happens to kids as they grow up, what different trajectories do we see in different ways. And I'm just going to highlight a couple of them that seem important. Each one of these lines is changes in communication, predominantly expressive language, but also receptive language. And each line contains a group of children that we followed, now who are 33, but at the time of this study were 19. And what you can see here, or what I want you to see, is that 2, although the range between the nines looks big, it's not, because you just check the numbers on the left. Their kids were really not differentiable by how much they talked, because most of the kids did not talk much. There were a few talkers, but very few. But what makes these kids different from each other is what happened between 2 and 5. And you'll see there were kids who were always at the top. There were kids who are always very slow, but there were late bloomers and kids who caught up. But that catching up really happened predominantly between 2 and 5. What you'll see after 5, and this is still true up to 35, is that people keep making gains. Even young adults who really didn't talk very much do gain a word or a gesture or some way of communicating, even into adulthood. So it isn't that they stop, but that after 5, that line becomes straighter. And so we didn't see in this sample miracles of people jumping up at age 9 or 10. And one of the issues here is for families to try to be realistic about how can we help their child keep making gains within their line of progress. Another thing which is quite different, but again, just to highlight for you, we looked at academic achievement. 2 things we found were that many kids with autism, even smart kids who do well on IQ tests, are not at age level on all their academic subjects, even though they may have some they're really good at. And so that's important to note and to get them help if they're not so good. The second main finding is that reading comprehension, starting at about age 9 and continuing into teens, was by far the best predictor of all the academic skills as to who would have a job and who would be able to live independently as a young adult. And I think often that gets lost because we do see many kids who can read and decode and read incredible things, but who don't know what they're reading. And the third point I wanted to make about the longitudinal data is just that we looked at adaptive skills, which is primarily getting dressed, taking baths or showers, being able to make a sandwich, being able to cross a street. And you'll see here we divided our sample just by how they'd done on nonverbal IQ tests. Again, every line is a child over time. So every colored line is a different child. And what's important here is there is a relationship, obviously, between IQ and adaptive skills. But where you see that yellow line is over half the kids in the lower group for IQ overlapped with over half the kids in the higher group. And I think that means 2 things. One is you can have a not very high IQ and be able to dress yourself and take a shower by yourself and make yourself a sandwich, maybe not cross the street, but at least within your house, take care of yourself so that no one else has to dress you. Um, and this can happen. And the converse of that is you can have a really high IQ and be really a waste of time in terms of taking yourself, where your mom is still measuring out your shampoo because otherwise you'd use the whole bottle. So we can do a better job with both of these groups of young adults and kids in terms of helping them reach their maximum criteria. So in the last few years, what we've focused on is how can we better understand the current opportunities and barriers that people face to having a good life. We also wanted to do a better job of defining what are positive outcomes for across the range of autistic people. And for some people that may mean full-time employment and living completely independently, but there are other people that are not going to reach those goals, but who do achieve things. And how can we define that? And then just because we're researchers, relating that to earlier years. So I just want to highlight 2 findings here. So these are data reported from our adults when they were about between 25 and 30. And we have parent reports for people with autism and intellectual disability, the self-reports for people with autism who don't have intellectual disability, and parent reports on those same people. What I want to highlight here is a couple things. One is the gold line, which is in each case, almost everybody had something they wanted to happen in the next 5 years. And that thing could be, I want to figure out how to get bird sounds on my iPad, or I want to figure out, how to make a burrito. But it also could be, I want a job, or I want to learn to drive. It really ranged, but we can find those goals if we ask. A second issue is the red line, which is housing, particularly for these are young adult kids with parents who are getting older, as we talked about this morning. And where are they going to live? And how can we make sure that they are in a good place in order to support the things they do? And then if you look for people without ID, the issue of wanting a family, wanting contacts, wanting particularly a partner is really relevant. Less so for other people. And then here, same sample, we did the same thing. So ask the same three groups of people. And what I want to see here is this top line. We asked families what made the biggest difference, families and autistic people talking for themselves, and when did it make a difference? And this red line is people. I think often when in those of us who are professionals, we think about services, or we're going to refer a child to get prompt treatment or ABA or peers or Jasper, which is great. But when we ask families what made a difference, it's the people that did that. It's a particular teacher, a particular speech therapist, a particular person from Voc Rehab who took them under their wing. And I think we have to be careful because this day and age, with AI and internet, we tend to download things and we don't know who these people are. I think a second issue is looking at the green line that gradually moved up is this whole idea of generative activities. And that goes back to, I love to do this, and this makes a difference. And this, what this is, could be anything. Again, from puzzles to dating to music. But we need to look for those things, as people have said this morning. I'm going to briefly show you videos because I'm not supposed to talk too long, but I just want to give you a sense because seeing these people who some of you have seen before is so much, you're going to remember that so much more than I'm. So this is a little guy. I'm going to show you about 10 seconds of him, who is one of the happiest kids we ever met. Autistic, behind, but absolutely sweet and happy, full of smiles. Loving family. And here he is at 30. And what I want you to see here, I'll let him talk for himself.
Oh, you're going to take my picture. He is kind of taking a picture. Well, almost smile. That is a big sweet smile together. It looks great.
So that is a young man who does not do well on IQ tests. He does talk, he has simple sentences, he lives at home, he has a part-time job with a family friend that he goes to where they love him, and he loves to do it, and he is paid. He is also incredibly helpful around the house. And I think the biggest concern for him is what will happen as his parents age. They're moving into their 70s, and that is a big concern. Here is another little guy who was equally cute, not as happy when he was 2. And you'll see he's showing Debbie what he wants. This is before we discovered bubble gums. So again, he knows what he wants, and he can't go through his life only wanting bubbles, but he knew. Here he is at 25. So he is somebody who is definitely profoundly autistic. He has very, very few words. But what I want to say about him is he changed. We saw him at 21, we saw him at 25, and you'll see at 25, he's playing our little game. He is very tolerant of it. And he gestures, which he had not done at 21. He also dropped the ping pong ball and he picked it up on his own. And his parents reported that he has a new activity, which is going out to watch birds. And he does this completely on his own. So the question is, how do we support him and his family to have joy and to do more for himself, but be reasonable? And we're also worried about medically. He is overweight. He does not get a lot of exercise, and it's hard to get him to exercise. And he's on a lot of medication.
Yeah. Score.
So that is not the end of the world, but it's new and he can learn things. And he did enjoy being with our young women. So here's how we tried to put together the World Health Organization's description of what is good quality of life. If you look along the bottom, it's having relationships. We define this as having someone who is not paid to work with you and is not a relative that the young adult clearly cared about and saw. And so it's about 50%. We had daily living skills and we set the limit at about an 8-year-old level, which meant that you did not have to have someone who bathed you and you could get yourself dressed. Someone else might need to pick out your clothes. And then you'll see current activities. And this is having something out of the house that seemed like someone really enjoyed it. They did go out of the house. This is minimal activities. And you can see even along the bottom how we're not doing great for this group of a sample. And this is all people who would meet criteria for autism and intellectual disability, mostly quite severe. If you look at the total along the top, the dark blue is people who have a friend and good daily living skills and get good activities. So at least over half of the sample are not getting really basic support, even though they live places where we identified those places like North Carolina by the support available. So to switch gears very quickly, this is a young girl. We also met at 2.
Sing to this baby, ready? Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear baby. Happy birthday to you. Okay, it's gonna blow them out. Ready?
So what she really wanted was eating the Play-Doh, which is why we replaced the Play-Doh with a bathing routine for these little kids. But she did sit with us and she had some understanding of language, although when we met her at 2, not much spoken language. But you'll see here, this is, I think, when she's an older teenager. She's describing a picture that has icons of the United States. So she lives in the South and there's a golf course where she lives. You'll also hear her talk about the apple that is in New York. And I just want you to see her because she is very bright, very capable with a great sense of humor.
See, plain coffee, but not oranges in Florida.
Yeah.
I wish I could get some oranges. I heard the oranges are delicious. They're pretty delicious. I remember, well, I do see a lot of country clubs around here,
Yeah.
but I don't remember enough in South Carolina being a golf state.
Mm-hmm.
Nowhere. Now, of course, Washington, D.C.
Mm-hmm.
I ain't gonna lie, I would love to go to New York if they have a big apple. Do they really have a big apple?
So they have, do you follow baseball?
Not really.
One of the baseball teams in New York, they have a big apple in their stadium, but I think that's the only big apple.
Yeah, but
We just went to see her. She asked us about the Big Apple. But what is really frustrating about this young woman who has a ton of skills is she lives in a rural area. She now lives actually in a trailer outside of her parents' house, which she can take care of and she's very proud of, but she has no daytime activity levels. And back to what I think Aaron said, transportation is an incredible issue, which often people blow off. And they shouldn't, because she could do so much. I'm one more child, and you just see this little guy.
Don't want to
And then-
spill it. The cookie. Cookie.
So he's going to bring it to his mother. His mother has been his advocate all along and fought for him to have services. At age 30, he had graduated 4 years before with a degree in engineering from a very difficult college. It took him several years to do it as he paced his courses, but he did it. And then he did not want to be an engineer. And so we were quite worried about him. His mother was very happy about having him home and not tense, but he really struggled with what he was going to do. And he's now working, I think, in a park district in his local neighborhood, and quite happy with the job, even though I think there's some pressure from people to say, wow, you're underemployed. So you'll hear what he says.
Oh, it's getting those big areas now.
Would you rather live in a cave or live in a treehouse?
Well, can I say it depends on, you know, the climate and stuff. Some places it might be more comfortable to live in a cave than say a tree house, you know?
Makes sense.
Well, and if you're in a place where it gets hot and humid, like say North.
So I can't spend the time, but he does explain electrifying, how he could electrify a treehouse. And I think back to what Andrew said earlier this morning about what does he want to do, because he has these amazing skills, but it is really up to him how he wants to spend his time. So when we're trying to quantify the quality of life of these people, we did the same thing, defining current friends as having a real friendship. Current living is being able to live independently. This is at 25. And current work is having some kind of at least part-time paid job, but it didn't in the last year. In our sample, this is people without intellectual disabilities, it was about 2/3, although at any given time it's more like 1/3, because hanging on to those jobs is really tough. And again, when we put this all together, the people in the green, we have about 25% of people without intellectual disabilities who are living on their own, have friendships, have a job, and less. And so there's so much to do, you guys. I want to just end by saying we also asked people, and this was to ask both parents and then the young adults who could speak for themselves, how do you feel about your life? And we were able to come up with a sort of happiness index. And that was related to some degree with things like jobs. But it was also related even more with the young adults who had ID, with how hyperactive they were they aggressive, and the feedback they got from other people. For more verbal young people, it was related to, did they feel depressed? Were they anxious? And general issues. And then again, to interests and activities. So I want to just end by saying people with autism have strengths. And I think we need to work from them. And you'll hear from the Hartmans, who I'm so grateful for coming today, about how do you do that. We can build on those strengths, but we also do need to be realistic, particularly in this world right now and in the United States, about what do you need to be able to do. And we heard about it from the jobs. Thank you for listening to me. I'll stop here and you'll get a chance to hear the Hartmans. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Lord, for that really interesting and informative lecture. We will save some time at the end of this session for our audience to ask Dr. Lord questions, but in the meantime, I would like to introduce our community discussants, Tom, Kim, Mary Ellen, and Tommy Hartman. Tommy could not be here today as he's busy with college classes, but he has given his family permission to share his story. Briefly, to introduce them a little bit more, Kim and Tom Hartman met in 1990 and have been married for 32 years. Mary Ellen was born in 2000 and Tommy was born in 2002. They were both diagnosed with autism in early childhood. Mary Ellen at 3.5 years of age, and Tommy at 2.5 years of age. They each met the high volume and frequency criteria of behaviors and disproportionate skills in areas of difficulties in communication, for them both nonverbal communication. Also things such as repetitive behaviors, rigidity with change, some difficulty with social awareness, and very high sensory integration needs. Mary Ellen is currently a student at Texas State University and is finishing her bachelor's degree in English. That's awesome. And Tommy is currently a student at the University of Arkansas, where he's finishing his degree in broadcast journalism. The Hartmans want to let you know that living with autism is a marathon, not a race, and they're excited to share their story with you, including key lessons as well as past and current struggles, and they're very happy to answer your questions as well. Thank you for being here, Hartmans, and I'll pass it over to you.
Great. Do we need to turn on our microphone?
Oh, no, my
You're on.
phone.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for having us. I'm Kim,
I'm Mary Ellen.
I'm Tom.
and we'll show a video of Tommy. We are so honored to be here, and we are so grateful to Dr. Lord. She truly did change our life, and you're going to understand why after a few short videos and hearing our story. So we're going to take you back 20 years ago for Tommy's autism diagnostic reevaluation 1 year after. We're going to show you a 6-minute video from the Today Show, and they were able to capture that diagnosis. Dr. Lord was asked to help launch Autism Speaks. And so we were up in the docket for Tommy's evaluation. And so we agreed to do that. And so I'm bringing you into this video. This is 14 months after Tommy was originally diagnosed. So you're going to see him 14 months after the start of early intervention and the difference that that can make between he was diagnosed at 2.5 and now this is 4 years old. And of course, we were up and going because Mary Ellen had already been diagnosed with Dr. Lord. And this was really important to understand. So we'll talk about it on the back half. This is the diagnostic.
Last year, during a week-long series on autism, we followed 2.5-year-old Tommy Hartman through an intense 3-day-long diagnosis and evaluation process. Well, recently, we went back to Michigan to see how Tommy was doing 1 year later.
It's tough to hear that your kid is autistic.
A little over a year ago, Tom and Kim Hartman learned that their son Tommy has autism. Tommy was 2.5 when the Hartmans brought him to the University of Michigan Autism Center for an evaluation. Although more social than most children with autism, Tommy had significant communication delays, repetitive behaviors, and he was nonverbal. That was 14 months ago. This is Tommy Hartman today.
All right, here we go. Well, on September 4th, and I remember exactly when, he said mommy for the first time ever.
Once the words started coming, once the dam was broken, literally poured out of him. It was a huge breakthrough.
We recently visited the Hartmans to check in on Tommy's progress.
Okay.
You want feet to the ceiling?
And by all accounts, the news is good. But this is not the story of a miracle. This is the story of a marathon.
The days are long, the progress is slow.
It's a road the Hartmans know well. Their daughter, Mary Ellen, was diagnosed with autism when she was 3. Both received educational interventions tailored to their individual needs.
For Tommy, because he had such a strong language deficit, he needed an environment where he could sit down and start to expand his vocabulary.
That's right. What does
While many therapies exist for children with autism, for Tommy, the Hartmans chose Applied Behavior Analysis, or ABA, with a special focus on Tommy's verbal behavior. In addition, Tommy spent time in a special preschool classroom
Tommy's turn.
and with a speech and language pathologist.
Is happy. Put the spoon on the book.
Tommy has had the type of therapy where the expressive work that we've done with him has built meaning.
And with better understanding have come other breakthroughs.
Tommy is able to tolerate change much more than he was before.
Going to Miss Dorothy's room.
In fact, Tommy has started spending time in a more mainstream or less restrictive classroom.
Initially, at the beginning, he started for maybe 5 minutes, and now we have been able to increase his time up to about an hour and 15 minutes.
But it is here, against the backdrop of more typical children, that Tommy's weaknesses stand out.
At times, he may become distracted.
Tommy, show me 10.
Here we go.
I think the follow-up visit is critical for continued progress because the boy Tommy was a year ago is not the boy he is today.
Recently, the Hartmans returned to the University of Michigan for a reevaluation with psychologist Catherine Lord.
Look, Tom, our hope is to partly measure progress, to look back and say what's changed, what hasn't changed.
Very nice.
Backpack. Definitely, the fact that he's talking makes a huge difference in what we can do.
The contrast to Tommy's previous testing is easy to see. In his fine motor skills,
Happy birthday, dear baby.
his speech,
Where's the dog? Look.
and his comprehension.
How many eyes do you have? Perfect.
But some things persist.
Give me the marker and put the car in the cup.
And two-part commands are still too complicated. But in the end, Dr. Lord is pleased.
You did such a good job.
Overall, I think Tommy did great. I think in terms of autism, I mean, he still has autism.
What's really important, I think, from what we've heard from Dr. Lord today, is to help us set a goal for Tommy that is challenging but achievable.
Good job.
That means capitalizing on Tommy's progress and making sure all of his classroom time is meaningful.
The fact that Tommy is using words to say what he's thinking is a huge milestone.
Giraffe. Giraffe.
The trouble is, once we get over one milestone, we have other milestones.
And that's the nature of this marathon.
I would expect that Tommy will have autism the rest of his life.
Okay. Sweet.
But I also will expect that he will get more and more independent and more capable of doing things that he enjoys.
Something the Hartmans hope as well.
Our 10,000-foot goals for Tommy and for Mary Ellen are similar to most parents. We want him to be able to make good choices and ultimately live an independent life. At the end of the day, what really matters is I love you, Mom, I love you, Tommy.
Ready?
For him to know that no matter where Tommy's going in his life, he has us.
And the Hartmans say the key to both of their children's progress has been the incredible collaboration with the public school, the private therapist, and of course, Dr. Lord. If you want to learn more,
Thank you. Okay, so thank you for putting up with that. It's fun to see it 20 years after the fact. So really quickly, Tommy can't be here today, but we're going to share his message with all of you. Here you go.
Hi, my name is Tommy Hartman, and I am 23 years old, and I was diagnosed with autism when I was 2 years old in Ann Arbor, Michigan, at the University of Michigan in 2005 when I saw Dr. Lord first. And I have been going in for reevaluations for 3 years until we moved to Austin, Texas when I was 7 years old in 2010. Currently, I am studying broadcast journalism at the University of Arkansas, and I'm graduating with my bachelor's degree in that broadcast journalism degree. And my goal would be to get a job back home in Austin, Texas. And that will be a lot for me, so we will see where the path will take me. So part of my autism making me be successful is my friendships and my teachers, professors, and coaches when I was in middle school, high school, and college, and my colleagues from UATV. I am so sorry I cannot be with y'all today. I wish I was there, and I really love you. And this is Tommy Hartman signing off.
Thank you. That I love you is specifically for Dr. Lord. And we all share that sentiment. And so I think what was so important for us to have you see that about that diagnostic is that Dr. Lord took the time. So whether you're coming at this as a family or you're a clinician, a doctor, and you're giving that diagnostic, the time that she spent with us for us to truly not be paralyzed by this diagnostic, but to be informed and energized, changed our life. It provided that diagnosis, and the time that she spent explaining it gave us the roadmap for early intervention and therapy, and the importance of building relationships and finding out what they want most, and then figuring out the path to help them achieve that and get them there. And so our secret recipe to every scenario, every aspect of their life, whether it be school, education, being a student, a child, a sibling, a grandchild, a niece or a nephew, was to figure out what was limiting them from being successful, okay, whether it was gaining a skill or reducing a behavior, and then how we could, whether it was related to their deficits in communication, their rigidity, their repetition, their social interaction, or that sensory integration piece, they were all tagged high in terms of volume and frequency. They came in at a 9 and we needed to reduce those behaviors to a 5. We had skills at a 2 and we needed to increase them to a 5. So finding our path in that disproportion that is autism and description of behaviors that define autism was critical. And so we used that formula. What is limiting you from being successful at every aspect of your life with your teachers, your coaches, your family? We taught our teachers that, we collaborated with our family, and everybody has provided that for them. So when they figured out what they really wanted, for Mary Ellen, it was her friendships and theater in high school. And for Tommy, it was his relationships and sports and wanting to be part of the football team. So we're at the 13-minute mark at this point. So I am going to turn it over to Mary.
To Dad.
No,
Dad goes first.
No.
Okay, Dad.
Okay. So first of all, I want to say that when the Today Show video was shot, I wore a suit every day to work. Today, we're getting ready to go to a wedding. That's why Tommy's flying in from Fayetteville. So we're happy to be formal, but that's what it's about. The VB map that we did at the same time the kids were forming was a key piece of their early intervention. I don't know if that's done anymore. I may be speaking from an old place, but that really helped to identify all the things Kim talked about. And then relationships with cousins, with aunts, uncles, friends, especially with Tommy. He got into a peer group of typical kids who loved him. He loves them. He's tracked them all the way from elementary school, some of them into college. And they've helped him to come into our world, finding what it is that your child is interested in, and then using that as a springboard to bring them into the typical world. And if that can happen, and that's happened for Mary too, through theater and a bunch of friend groups that she has had from theater and some other places, she was in it allows them to build. And yes, they love that area, but we can also use that for some therapy and build in around it.
Yeah.
And that's been key. Mary, I'll turn over to you so you can talk about yourself.
Hi, everyone. Again, my name is Mary Ellen, and I was diagnosed with autism, as my parents said, when I was 3.5 years old. However, I didn't find out that I had my diagnosis until I was like 12, when I was in middle school, which based on you guys can only expect, that is the worst time to find out that you have a diagnosis, because of puberty, on top of dealing with the onset of people making fun of you, or the different social groups and all of that, and finding out that you had autism at that age was so, it was both relieving, but also can really put a toll on you at that age. because obviously with, well, like what I said, you're dealing with all that, and then on top of finding out that you have this diagnosis and all that. But I think because of that, like, I think it did involve a lot of, like, self-discovery and all that. And I think that ultimately, at the end of the day, I think what really did help me, like, come to accept it was knowing what I struggled with and trying to build on that, whether it be with teachers or with my friends, particularly. So yeah, and then also, like, yeah.
You want to show your family?
Um,
Mary made some slides of the key joyful aspects. These are the people who are the glue in our life, our relationships that we have. And these are just a few shots. Go ahead and
Yeah.
talk about any of your cousins.
Yeah, so all my family, like from my cousins and both my moms and my dads and my grandparents have like helped me a ton. Wait. Okay, there we go. And then with friends, like my brother has his friend group, and then the friends that I have, like I'm just letting you guys know right now about friends. Like I like these pictures are not recent, so like.
Well, no, we have it
Yeah.
pretty mixed up. So our friendships, let's go to your next slide that you made, which I think is great.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, more friends.
Yeah.
All through life.
And then the teachers that
and coaches.
Yeah, and instructional assistants, and then for the experiences, I will say that to any parent out there watching this right now, it is possible for make sure you're exposing your kid to normal daily regular activities, because that will allow your child to, like, become adaptable if they so choose, and allow them to, like, experience normal things so that they can increase their likelihoods of becoming independent. Like with both me and my brother, we both drive now at our age because our parents allowed us to, like, experience that and everything. And I know that it may be difficult for some that on the spectrum, but for others, like me and my brother, it comes naturally. So
yeah.
And then we also have, like, also being at traditions and rituals as well also help us as well. Do you have anything to comment, Mom?
Yes, our family has been an absolute game changer. We are so fortunate and so lucky to have our family and our traditions and our rituals. Every year the kids get dressed up in their pajamas for Christmas, come down the stairs. All of those traditions and rituals are the bridge from your past to your future. We can
with their cousins, aunts and uncles.
Yes,
etc.
our dear friends, our community, we're so lucky. And our advice also would be to find that community. Sometimes you can find that community of friends who want to be available to your kids through faith organizations, through neighborhood organizations, whatever it's going to be. And can you quickly just mention, we have a few minutes, your clubs at Texas State that you participate in?
So in Texas State, I was mainly as an English major. You would think that I was in a bunch of English related majors, but so I was, even though I didn't do theater after high school for monetary related reasons, I ended up joining a co-ed theater fraternity called Alpha Psi Omega that mainly is as a volunteer-based group. And then I also joined a film club as well. And then there was also another club that is massive, not massive, but like is important, and that is a autism support club at Texas State, because believe it or not, like Texas State has one of the higher rates of students that have neurodivergent needs, like autism or Down syndrome or any other neurodivergent need in the state of Texas, and I think the country as well. But regardless, like I founded my group of people through those organizations, and I hope to remain friends with those people now after leaving Texas State.
Mary, your mom and I are really proud of you for advocating for yourself, understanding where you need to go and find those resources. We always want to help you, but we're really proud of you for being able to do that.
Yes, you and your brother. And just, I know there'll be questions, but there's I think over 12 Medicaid waivers for the state of Texas. We did not initiate any of those Medicaid waivers or Social Security. At this point, we will. for disabilities, but because, you know, we're in such a gray area, I just wanted to make you aware of that. But those resources are available, and because the state wait lists are so long, we definitely tell families all the time, get your name on the list. You don't know where you'll be. Take the meeting with Social Security. You may have to have several interviews for autism, but you will get there. And definitely have those resources available, because tomorrow, obviously don't want to end on a grim note, but we want to make sure that the children have a long-term plan. Right. And also the last we'll say is the supported decision-making agreement in Texas. We also have that that allows parents to support as your children need it.
As far as I know, it's still unique to Texas. It allows us to get over issues with educational educational and HIPAA issues, because it is Mary or Tommy, in each case as an adult, telling the provider or the educational institution to share the data with us. It's their ability to do it. It's their ability to take it away.
Yes, and we participated in several studies with Dr. Lord, including the genetics study. Okay, thank you so much for this opportunity.
Are there any questions?
No, they'll do that.
Okay.
And
I appreciate that, Mr. Hartman. Thank you very much, really, for that phenomenal and powerful reflection talk. Mary Ellen, really incredible, really motivating what you've done, what you have achieved, what you still are doing. Same with Tommy. If he was here, please relay to him. Just really incredible to see that, and what you guys have done also to support and really access different studies and other work. So thank you very much. Now is time for questions, and we have a couple from the audience. These will be both for the Hartmans and for Dr. Lord. I am going to start with a couple as a part of our questions and answers. And what I want to start with, and Dr. Lord, I'll sort of have you comment on this first, is what do you think is the most important thing for families to know about for their children and treatment options at different times in development? You showed some beautiful trajectories of data, but what do you think about in different times of development?
I think, as the Hartmans were a perfect example of, kids need different things at different times. And so looking at what is the priority here? I was thinking about it because when I met Mary Ellen, she was beautiful, shy, a little anxious, very willing to try the things that I wanted her to do. She was such a good sport, but quiet. And then in comes her brother, who was one of the loudest children I have ever met. Incredibly cute, but so loud. And also when I met him, I thought, I don't think he understands a word we're saying, but he's quite smart in all kinds of other areas. So what on earth are we going to do? So even with two kids in the same family who have very similar scores on some things, they needed very different things. And I think that they have stuck up for themselves as of their parents, and as of, like Andrew was saying earlier, to what do you need? So I think you don't have to plan out your child's life. You can say, all right, in the next 2 years, what do we need? And is it you can do more than one thing, but you can say the priority is to try to get him to talk, or to get him to understand, and to get him to be more comfortable, so that people aren't saying, oh my gosh, what? I'm evacuating here. Or for Mary, I think it was to say, here's this beautiful little girl, but who is sometimes afraid. And how do we pull her into things, but let her have some choices? So I think it is going to be different. And there just isn't a single answer, unfortunately. And sometimes people feel like, oh, if my child isn't included immediately, life is over. That is not true. Or maybe it's really helpful to be included in a classroom, but maybe if your child isn't learning to read, it would be better to move out and come back. So one step at a time.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think that makes a lot of sense. And like you said, one step at a time, depending on what is probably the most important factor that you're trying to focus on in order to make things better, or, improve for the next stage. That kind of brings me, to the next question, and then I'll go over to the Hartmans a little bit. But you mentioned it's different things for two kids who might have very similar profiles, to a brother and a sister. And I know, given just how much we're talking about autism right now in the media and understanding this large spectrum, even that you showed, Dr. Lord, is autism one condition?
I mean, it's not one condition. I don't think anybody thinks it's one condition. I do think it's been really helpful to have that word because I think otherwise people don't pay attention to some of the things that autistic kids and adults need, particularly support socially in communication, and then also the concern about repetitive behaviors and sensory needs. So I think it's really useful to consider it. But we know that there are many genetic factors that contribute to autism, and there may be other things, not vaccines, not circumcision, not Tylenol, but there could be many other things. So I think you have to consider autism and then learning disabilities and mood and level of activity, and then what is an immediate problem like aggression, which just knocks out everything else if you have a child where you're worried about them getting hurt or hurting someone else.
Yeah, no, that's really helpful. I'll just kind of, point over the sort of the earlier question to the Hartman family. And Mary Ellen, you mentioned so many wonderful things, friends, experiences. And I wanted to ask you and Mr. and Mrs. Hartman, what was one, maybe if you can pinpoint, because you had such beautiful pictures and slides, experience that you described as sort of normal activities, that you felt was really impactful for you? Like I saw the skiing one. I'm a skiing fan, so wondering about that.
Well, I mean, for me, the only time all other time I went skiing prior to that picture was like back in 2011. I just remember hating skiing, but I think I hated it more because I was worried about falling off. But then now because I've like worked out and I've done like the regimen, shout out to my cousins for being massive skiers to help me get to that, for telling me to like just actively work out because I always was working out, but I needed to get that regimen to get there. And also I had to worry about like, my lung capacity and other things and not have to worry about like, if I'm gonna fall. There are much bigger things that you need to worry about than just falling. You need to like actually like remind yourself that you need to be physically healthy to like, yeah.
You do.
Good. That
You
was
do.
good.
Very good.
I will also say,
Yeah.
the kids always wanted to achieve things. They wanted to drive. Well, we had to find a path. So it was a 6-year path for driving. They wanted to go to college. So we had to practice living independently. That was a 3-year path. Dr. Lord, that was when you came to Austin and we saw you. We drove you past the apartment building. And so everything that they want, it's never a no, it's let's find a path. I want to point out one big deal was, they're both such good navigators. Their first independent trip flying on an airplane to meet grandma and grandpa in Chicago. So we had safety nets at both sides, happened in high school, and that was
My brother's first flight alone independently was in college, so
he took longer.
yeah.
Sibling rivalry is alive and well.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's great. That's really helpful. Thank you for sharing, Mary Ellen and Hartman's. Oh, I'm going to go to one of the questions now from the audience, and I'll kind of over to Dr. Lord first, which is first, they say, thank you so much for the Hartman family for sharing your story. And, with the regional center, which is our early intervention services, what it's named in California, kids cannot get diagnosed for autism until the age of 3, or that's often what we know happens, that it waits until 3. What are other avenues that we can recommend for families to assist with receiving an appropriate diagnosis that is valid, or what I'm assuming is probably helpful for insurance and services purposes?
Yeah, I mean, I think we are all pretty disgusted with regional centers saying that diagnoses can't be made till 3. So I think politically we need to push Pete, for example, to say that is not appropriate. I think secondly, though, many different kinds of physicians can make official diagnoses, as can psychologists. So I think getting on websites, looking up like autism in Los Angeles or Autism Speaks has resources. Any parent group, anybody that you know who has an autistic child, ask them where they can go because you can get a diagnosis from a child neurologist, a pediatrician, a child psychiatrist who often don't see kids that young, but they can do it, or psychologists. And we can do it. And we've got to be careful with little kids, so that's why the re-eval is important. But you can diagnose autism really down into toddlerhood for some kids, and they should not have to wait.
Yeah, agree wholeheartedly. And, I think you can also go to the Baby Siblings Research Consortium website where they have a lot of information on early signs and symptoms of autism. Share it with your providers, if there are resistance to being referred over or not. I should start wrapping up here, but to the Hartmans, I'll just say, anything last words that you guys would like to share based on this beautiful story and what you've heard even today.
Yeah, and I know we probably not have many families on, but for those of you who see families, I think the most important thing when you get a diagnosis is don't let it paralyze you. This is actually a freeing moment because you now have a path. But the path you have to pick is, and I don't know, I'll just say that when our kids were very young, we had a whole peer group of people who also had diagnoses, and many of them were looking for cures. And that's great. And if you find a cure and you cure this, I'm not sure it's curable, but if you do, great. But you have to start the early intervention. And but you have to start the early intervention. And so as you talk to families, the advice from us, from a neighbor who was at NIH, said this is going to be a marathon, not a sprint. And so that's the way you need to treat it. And we're still running the marathon over 20 years later now. And that was some of the best advice. Get the same advice from Dr. Lord at Tommy's first.
I'll let you finish,
diagnosis.
but I do want to say that the connection is key, and to be a fierce advocate for your children and to empower them. And we just want to thank Dr. Lord so much. You truly have changed our lives. Being able to see you every year for the next 7 years after that, and your words of encouragement and just a very realistic advice and approach on every step of the way. I know you get by late night texts, so thank you. We're incredibly grateful, and thank you. Do you want to say anything?
I'm good. Yeah, I'm good. Thank you so much.
Okay.
No, that was phenomenal, Mary Ellen. Thank you so much, Hartmans. Thank you so much, Dr. Lord, for this incredible, informative session. We will now take about a 13-minute break. And just a reminder that each presentation is being recorded. We'll have the recording and the presentation slides available on the Tarjan website in a few weeks. In addition, a plain language podcast episode with Dr. Lord and our disability rights advocate, Holly Oliver, is now available on Spotify and on our website. The link is posted in the chat, or will be posted in the chat. Our next presenter will be UCLA Tarjan Center Director, Dr. Blake Warner, who will be presenting Dating and Sexuality on the Autism Spectrum. Thank you very much.